The battlefield was silent, but the silence was heavy. Smoke curled up from the broken ground, and the air smelled of fire and metal. Zirith, the alien soldier, dragged himself through the rubble, his body shaking with pain. He had fought bravely, but his ship had crashed, and now he was alone. His kind had always told him one thing about humans. They were full of wrath, merciless, and cruel. If a human found him, it would mean death. Still, he had no strength to move, his green blood staining the soil beneath him. The night was dark, the stars hidden by clouds. Zirith pressed his claws into the dirt, tried to stay awake. He told himself over and over, do not get caught, do not let the humans find you. But his vision blurred, and every sound felt louder than it was. A crack of stone, the crunch of boots. His alien heart raced. Someone was coming. From the shadows, a human soldier appeared, tall, strong, holding a weapon pointed straight at him. Zirith froze, his throat tight with fear. This was at the end. The human's eyes were sharp, and the weapon steady. Zirith raised his hand slowly, claws trembling, his voice weak. Do it, human. Finish me. But the human did not fire. He studied the alien for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then, slowly, he lowered the weapon. Zirith blinked in confusion, unsure if it was a trick. The human took a careful step closer, his voice calm but firm. You're hurt. Zirith stared, his mind spinning. This was not what he expected, not what the stories of humans had warned. Why would a human lower his weapon? Why would he care about an enemy soldier bleeding on the ground? The human knelt beside him, his armor scratched and dirty, his own face pale with exhaustion. He reached into a small pouch and pulled out a bandage. Zirith's breath caught, his claws curling in defense. But the human only muttered, "You'll bleed out if I don't help you." Zirith's voice was sharp, almost broken. Why? Why would you help me? The human's eyes flickered with something Zirith did not recognize. Kindness, maybe, or pity. Because you're not my enemy right now, the human replied quietly. You're just someone dying. For a moment, the battlefield around them seemed to fade. No war, no hatred, no wrath. Just two beings, both scarred by violence. Zirith wanted to pull away, to reject this strange mercy. But his strength was gone, and his fears slowly shifted into confusion. The human carefully wrapped the wound, his hands steady though his eyes looked tired. Zirith studied him, searching for the cruelty he had been warned about. But he found only determination. The night grew colder, and silence stretched between them. Finally, the human spoke again. Can you walk? Zirith shook his head weakly. No, not far. The human sighed, glancing around the ruins. If my people find you, they'll kill you on sight. He said, if your people find me with you, they'll kill me too. His lips pressed into a thin line, as if weighing a dangerous choice. Zirith whispered, then why not leave me here? Why risk yourself? The human met his eyes, steady and firm. Because I refuse to be the monster this war wants me to be. He reached out his hand, offering it. Zirith hesitated, staring at the human's open palm. A gesture of trust, of kindness. Every story he had been told about humans screamed at him to refuse. But his body ached, his heart raced, and something deep inside whispered, take the chance. Slowly, trembling, Zirith placed his clawed hand into the human's. The grip was firm, steady, and real. The human pulled him up, supporting his weight. For the first time since the crash, Zirith felt something other than fear. He felt hope, small and fragile, but alive. As they stumbled together into the darkness, Zirith thought of the warnings his commanders had shouted. Fear the humans, they bring only wrath. But now, with this human by his side, he wondered if the stories had been wrong all along. The war was not over, danger still surrounded them. But on this broken battlefield, under the shadow of death, an unexpected kindness had begun to bloom, and that kindness might change everything. The ruined city was quiet, but danger lived in every shadow. Ethan, the human soldier, half dragged and half carried Zirith through the broken streets. The alien was weak, every step heavy, his wound still bleeding. The human kept his weapon ready, eyes sharp, yet his grip on Zirith was steady and careful. Neither spoke for a long time, the silence broken only by the crunch of their boots on shattered stone. Finally, Ethan pushed open a door to a half-collapsed bunker, its walls cracked but still standing. Inside, dust filled the air, and the smell of old smoke lingered. He guided Zirith to a corner and lowered him gently to the ground. Zirith hissed in pain, but did not resist. His mind swirled with confusion. Why was this human helping him, when killing him would have been easier, safer, and expected? Ethan crouched, his hands moving quickly as he checked the alien's wounds. "You'll survive if we stop the bleeding," he muttered. Zirith narrowed his eyes, his voice low and sharp. "Why do you care? I am your enemy." The human paused, then looked him in the eye. "Because I'm tired of this war turning every living thing into a target." Zirith stared, the words twisting inside him. His people had painted humans as demons of destruction, as wrath-made flesh. But this man before him showed no hate in his touch, no cruelty in his voice. Only exhaustion, stubbornness, and something else, a strange kind of kindness. It unsettled Zirith more than any weapon could. For hours, Ethan worked, tearing cloth to bind the wound, sharing his water, and even offering food from his pack. Zirith at first refused, baring his teeth, but hunger gnawed at him, and finally he accepted. The taste was bitter, dry, but to his surprise, the human handed him the larger share, keeping only a little for himself. Night deepened, and the sounds of soldiers echoed faintly outside the bunker. Zirith stiffened, his claws tightening. "Your people are close," he whispered. Ethan nodded grimly. "They'll be sweeping the ruins by morning. If they find you here, they'll kill you." He sat back, resting his head against the wall, his weapon across his lap. "And if they find me hiding you, they'll kill me too." Zirith tilted his head, confusion flashing across his alien features. "Then why risk it? Why not leave me?" Ethan's answer was quiet, but every word was sharp. "Because I don't want to be like them. Not anymore." The alien studied him carefully, the glow of moonlight falling through the cracks of the ruined ceiling. Zirith whispered, "You are strange, human. Your kind is feared for wrath. Yet you show mercy." Ethan gave a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "Mercy doesn't win wars, but maybe it saves souls." Hours passed, and silence stretched long and heavy. But then Zirith shifted, pulling something from a pouch hidden in his armor. It was a small vial, glowing faintly with alien liquid. He handed it shakily toward Ethan, his claws trembling. "Medicine from my people. It will heal you faster if you are wounded." Ethan hesitated, staring at the vial. He realized this was more than just medicine. It was a choice, a fragile offering of trust. Their eyes met, human and alien, soldier and enemy. Ethan slowly accepted the vial, tucking it into his pocket. Neither spoke, but something unseen passed between them, a bond forming in the darkness. Outside, voices grew louder, boots crunching over stone, the search beginning. Ethan motioned for silence, raising his weapon, his muscles tense. Ziritha's alien heart pounded, his claws ready though he was too weak to fight. In that tense silence, Ethan leaned close and whispered, "Stay quiet, stay alive, I'll protect you." Zirith swallowed hard, the words echoing in his mind. An enemy who should have brought death had chosen instead to protect him. And in that moment, the fear that had lived in Zirith since childhood cracked just a little. He no longer saw Ethan only as human. He saw him as something more, someone capable of both wrath and kindness. As the soldiers outside shouted orders, Ethan held his breath, his finger on the trigger. Zirith held his too, waiting, trembling, wondering if this strange bond would end in blood or in survival. The night pressed heavy on both of them, and in the shadows of war, a dangerous choice had been made. The choice to trust, the choice to protect, the choice that would change both their lives forever. The bunker was cold, its walls cracked and broken, but inside it felt like the only safe place left. Ethan sat against the wall, his rifle across his knees, his eyes never closing fully. Sleep tempted him, but he fought it back, knowing danger prowled outside. Beside him, Zirith shifted uncomfortably, his alien frame too large for the narrow corner, his wound aching. Every few minutes, his glowing eyes flicked toward Ethan, still unsure whether to trust or to fear him. The silence grew heavy, broken only by the sound of distant footsteps in the ruined streets. At last, Zirith spoke, his voice rough. "Why do you stay awake when you could rest?" Ethan gave a tired smile, "Because if I fall asleep, soldiers might walk in and find you." Zirith tilted his head, puzzled. "You would risk death to guard me. An enemy?" The human shrugged, his expression unreadable. "Maybe you're not my enemy anymore." Zirith thought about that, his claws tapping lightly against the floor. His people had taught him to see humans only as destroyers, creatures who brought only pain and wrath. But this human, Ethan, kept proving that picture wrong. Zirith's chest tightened with confusion. He wanted to ask why, but the words felt too heavy. Hours passed, and hunger gnawed at both of them. Ethan tore the last piece of dried bread in half and handed it over, keeping the smaller share. Zirith stared at it, suspicious. "Why give me more than you take?" Ethan answered simply, "Because you need it more." The alien accepted the food, chewing slowly, his mind unsettled by such small acts of kindness. Later, when a moonlight cut through the cracked ceiling, Ethan finally asked, "Tell me about your world." Zirith hesitated, his first instinct to stay silent, but then something inside urged him to speak. His voice softened. "My people live under 3 suns. Our skies are violet. Our rivers glow at night. We were once a peaceful race until the war reached us." Ethan listened, his eyes focused, as if each word painted an image in his mind. When Zirith finished, Ethan sighed. "It sounds beautiful. I wish I could see it without a gun in my hands." For the first time, Zirith felt something shift. He was not just speaking to a human soldier, but to a being who wanted to understand. The fear that had ruled his heart began to bend, replaced by curiosity. But the bond was tested sooner than expected. Ethan's skin was pale, sweat dripping from his forehead, a fever creeping in from an old wound on his arm. Zirith noticed, his eyes narrowing. "You are ill." Ethan waved it off. "I've had worse. Don't worry about me." But by the next hour, his hands shook, and his breathing grew ragged. Zirith looked at the glowing vial he had given earlier, still untouched in Ethan's pocket. He reached forward and pulled it out, pressing it back into the human's hand. "Drink it, human. It will cure the sickness." Ethan frowned, suspicious. What if it's poison? Zirith's voice hardened. "If I wanted you dead, I would not be here. I would not have shared food. I would not have stayed." The silence stretched, heavy and tense. Finally, Ethan uncorked the vial and swallowed, grimacing at the bitter taste. Minutes later, the fever began to ease, his breath coming steadier, his eyes clearer. He looked at Zirith with something new in his gaze. Not just trust, but respect. "You saved my life," Ethan whispered. Zirith's answer was quiet. "You saved mine first." Outside, the ruins echoed with the sound of soldiers searching, their voices sharp in the night. Ethan motioned for silence, pulling Zirith deeper into the shadows. Boots crunched closer, flashlights cut through cracks in the bunker walls. Zirith's heart thundered, his claws ready, but Ethan pressed a hand to his chest, a silent command to stay still. The patrol passed by, their voices fading, leaving only the distant hum of war machines. In the darkness, both human and alien let out the breath they had been holding. Ethan leaned back, whispering, "We can't stay here long. They'll come again." Zirith nodded, but his gaze lingered on Ethan. Somewhere deep inside, he knew a bond had been formed, one neither of them could easily break. They were no longer just 2 survivors from different worlds. They were something else now, something dangerous to the war. 2 enemies learning to see each other not as monsters, but as allies. And in that fragile moment of trust, both wondered the same question. Would their bond save them, or destroy them when the war discovered the truth. The night had barely ended when the sound of engines rolled through the ruins. Ethan froze, his hand gripping his rifle, his ears sharp to every vibration in the ground. Xerath's alien senses twitched too. He could hear the heavy rhythm of human patrols, moving closer, searching. They were no longer safe in the bunker. The walls were cracked, the entrance half broken, and if soldiers looked inside, both of them would be finished. Ethan whispered, "We have to move before they sweep this area." Xerath tried to rise, but stumbled, his wound pulling him down. Ethan caught him, steadying his weight. "You won't last long out there like this," Ethan muttered. Xerath clenched his teeth. "Then leave me. Human, your people will not forgive you if they find us together." But Ethan's eyes burned with stubborn fire. "I already made my choice." They slipped into the shadows of the broken streets, moving slowly, one supporting the other. The city around them was dead, its towers shattered, its streets littered with metal and ash. Xerath's chest tightened as he looked at the destruction. Was this the wrath his people had always spoken of, or simply the cost of endless war? Ethan noticed his stare and said quietly, "It wasn't always like this. Once this city had music, markets, laughter." Xerath did not answer, but the thought stayed in his mind. As dawn crept in, Ethan led them to a collapsed pharmacy. Its roof caved in, but its lower rooms intact. Inside, the shelves were broken, medicines scattered. Ethan began to search for supplies, bandages, painkillers, anything useful. Xerath leaned against the wall, his glowing eyes watching him carefully. Suddenly, Ethan hissed, clutching his side, the old wound straining again. He tried to hide it, but Xerath stepped forward. "You are hurt again." Ethan waved him off. "I'll manage." But the alien ignored the protest, forcing himself upright despite the pain. His claws dug through the broken shelves, searching, until he found a container with medical salve. He returned and pressed it into Ethan's hand. "Use this, it will slow the infection." The human stared at him in surprise. "You risked yourself for me," Ethan said slowly, as if the truth had only just struck him. Xerath's voice was steady. "Kindness is not yours alone, human." The bond between them deepened in silence, heavy with unspoken words. But their fragile peace did not last. As they prepared to leave, a sharp voice echoed from outside. "Over here, I saw movement." Ethan cursed under his breath, pulling Xerath behind the broken counter. Boots pounded into the building, flashlights cutting across the darkness. Two soldiers entered, rifles raised, scanning the ruins. Xerath's claws twitched. He could attack, but Ethan shook his head fiercely. The soldiers stepped closer, one of them kicking aside debris. Then his light froze on the corner of a claw print in the dust. "Tracks," he muttered, "the alien's close." Xerath's chest tightened, ready to spring, but Ethan made a sudden decision. He stood up, stepping into the open, rifle lowered. "Only me here," he said flatly. The soldiers frowned, confused. "Then what's that noise?" One asked. Ethan's voice was firm, almost sharp. "Rats. The place is full of them. You want to waste bullets on shadows?" The soldiers exchanged a look, uncertain. Finally, one spat, "Stay sharp. If command finds out you missed an alien, it's on your head." They turned and left, their boots fading back into the ruins. Xerath exhaled heavily, stepping from the shadows, his voice low. "You lied for me. You risked your life." Ethan gave a half-smile. "Looks like we're even now." But the danger was far from over. Unbeknownst to them, one of the soldiers had lingered outside, suspicious. He had seen the faint glimmer of alien blood on the ground where Xerath had stumbled. He narrowed his eyes, whispering into his comms, "I think Ethan's hiding something." Inside the ruined pharmacy, Ethan helped Xerath prepare to move again. Neither of them knew that betrayal was already circling them. The bond they had formed was about to be tested harder than ever. For the war was merciless, and mercy had a price. The sun had risen higher, casting pale light over the ruins. Ethan and Xerath moved carefully, their bodies weary but their bond stronger than before. Yet neither knew that eyes were already watching them. The soldier who had seen the alien's blood had reported back to the commander, and suspicion had begun to grow. By noon, Ethan guided Zereth into another shelter, this time the remains of a burnt-out school. The halls were littered with broken desks and shattered glass. Children's drawings still clung to the walls, faded by fire and time. Zereth stared at them silently, his alien gaze tracing the bright colors of a world that no longer existed. This was a place of learning, he murmured, his voice low. Ethan nodded grimly. Once, but war doesn't spare the innocent. As they rested, Ethan checked his communicator, only to find multiple messages from command. Orders for all soldiers to report, a sweep team closing in. His stomach twisted. If he obeyed, they would find Zereth. If he disobeyed, they would know something was wrong. Zereth noticed his unease. Your people are calling you. Ethan shoved the device away. I can't go back. Not yet. The alien tilted his head. Why? You risk everything by staying with me. Ethan's answer was quiet but sharp, because leaving you to die would make me no better than the monsters I fight against. But even as he spoke, betrayal was crawling closer. In the command tent miles away, Ethan's superior, Captain Rourke, slammed a fist onto the table. One of my men claims Ethan is hiding an alien, he growled, his voice like steel. The other officers exchanged uneasy glances. Bring him in, alive if possible, Rourke ordered, and if the alien is with him, kill it. Back in the ruins, Zereth's sharp ears caught the sound of approaching boots. He stiffened, claws curling. They are coming. Ethan swore under his breath, grabbing his rifle. Stay behind me, he said firmly, though he knew protection would not be easy this time. Moments later, a squad of soldiers poured into the ruined school, rifles raised, eyes scanning. Ethan stepped forward quickly, blocking their line of sight to Zereth. What are you doing here alone? One demanded. Ethan forced his voice steady. Recon, I was scouting the area for enemy movement. The soldier's eyes narrowed. Then why didn't you report back to command? Before Ethan could answer, another soldier stepped in, the same one who had seen the alien's blood. Because he's hiding something, he spat, pointing toward the back of the hall. Show us what's behind those desks. Zereth's chest tightened, his breath sharp. Ethan raised his weapon slightly, tension snapping in the air. There's nothing there, he growled, his voice carrying warning. The squad shifted uneasily, their rifles twitching upward. The betrayer smirked. Then you won't mind if we check. Before they could move, Zereth stepped out of the shadows, his claws raised but his posture weak. The soldiers froze, shock flashing across their faces. An alien, one hissed. I knew it. The betrayer snapped. He's been protecting it. The rifles lifted higher, ready to fire. But Ethan moved instantly, stepping between Zereth and the squad, his own rifle raised. Stand down, he barked. You're not killing him. The soldiers hesitated, stunned at the sight of one of their own defending an enemy. Ethan, think about what you're doing, the betrayer sneered. This thing is not your friend. It's your death. Ethan's voice was iron. No, he's alive. He's wounded, and he's under my protection. The squad leader shook his head. You've lost your mind, soldier. Tension pulsed through the hall, every finger ready to pull a trigger. Zereth whispered softly behind Ethan. Let me go. Human, if I surrender, they may spare you. Ethan did not look back, his stance unshaken. No, Zereth, I won't abandon you. For a long moment, silence held them all, the school ruins echoing only with the sound of breathing and the crack of broken glass under boots. Then one soldier raised his rifle higher, breaking the fragile balance. The choice hung in the air. Betrayal had cornered them, and survival demanded something more than words. The ruined school was frozen in silence, rifles raised, eyes locked, breath caught in throats. Ethan stood tall in front of Zereth, his weapon aimed at his own squad. Every muscle in his body trembled with tension, yet his stance was steady. Lower your weapons, he commanded, his voice sharp. The soldiers hesitated, stunned at the sight of one of their own protecting an alien. The betrayer sneered, You've lost it. Ethan, step aside or we put you down too. Ethan's jaw tightened. If you fire, you'll hit me first. Behind him, Ziritha's claws twitched, his body weak, but his instincts screaming to fight. He whispered, "Ethan, I will not let you die for me." But Ethan did not move, his voice like steel. "No one touches you." The squad leader raised his hand, ready to give the order. Before he could speak, Zirith suddenly stepped forward, his body blocking Ethan. His glowing eyes swept across the soldiers, his voice hoarse but fierce. "If you must kill someone, kill me, not him." The soldiers blinked in shock, unsure how to respond to such a surrender. Ethan grabbed Ziritha's arm, pulling him back, anger flashing his eyes. "Don't you dare." Zirith met his gaze. "You showed me kindness when I expected wrath. Let me repay it." The weight of his words hung heavy. The betrayer snarled, raising his rifle higher. "Enough of this. Orders are clear. Aliens die." His finger tightened on the trigger. In a blur, Ethan swung his rifle, knocking the weapon aside. Just as it fired, the bullet sparking against the wall. Chaos erupted, shouts filling the air, weapons clashing, dust rising as boots scrambled across the ruined hall. Ethan fired a warning shot into the ceiling, the crack echoing like thunder. "Stand down," he shouted, his voice carrying both rage and desperation. The squad froze, the smoke curling around them. Zirith stood tall despite his wounds, his chest rising and falling, his eyes blazing with strange pride. The squad leader lowered his weapon slightly, confusion flickering across his face. "Why, Ethan? Why protect it?" he demanded. Ethan's voice shook but held firm. "Because he's not a monster. He saved me when he didn't have to. He's alive, and I will not let this war turn us into executioners." The words cut through the smoke, through the fear, through the wrath. Some of the soldiers lowered their rifles, doubt creeping in. But the betrayer refused, fury burning in his eyes. "This is treason. You'll hang for this." He lunged forward, aiming at Zirith again. Before he could fire, Ethan moved without hesitation, slamming into him, wrestling the rifle away. They crashed to the floor, fists and fury colliding. Ethan's anger exploded like fire, years of grief, loss, and exhaustion pouring into every strike. The betrayer spat blood, hissing, "You're weak. You care for things that should die." Ethan's fist tightened, but then he stopped, breath ragged. He could end the man right there, yet something inside held him back. His voice was raw. "No, I won't be like you." He stood, tossing the rifle aside, his chest heaving. The squad stared, caught between loyalty and doubt. Zirith limped forward, his claws raised not to strike, but to shield Ethan. His voice was quiet, heavy with meaning. "Humans show wrath, but this one shows kindness too, and it is stronger than fear." The hall was silent again, broken only by the creak of fire-damaged beams. The soldiers lowered their rifles slowly, their faces torn with conflict. The betrayer lay on the ground, glaring but powerless. Ethan placed a hand on Ziritha's shoulder, steadying him. Their eyes met, and in that moment they both knew. They had crossed a line that could never be undone. Wrath had almost destroyed them, but kindness had pulled them back. And now, standing together in the ruins, they were more than soldier and alien, more than enemies. They were something new, something the war could never have predicted. But outside these broken walls, the world still demanded blood, and mercy always came with a price. The ruined school stood quiet after the storm of voices and gunfire. Dust hung in the air like smoke from a dying fire. Ethan stood with Zirith at his side, both exhausted, both wounded, but both unbroken. The squad of soldiers lowered their rifles fully now, no one daring to make the next move. The betrayer sat on the ground, his face twisted with rage, but his power gone. The squad leader finally spoke, his voice low and uncertain. "Ethan, what do you expect us to do? You've defied orders. You've protected an enemy." Ethan's answer came steady. Though his chest ached with fear, "I expect you to see him as I do. Not a monster, not a weapon, but a life worth sparing." His words carried weight, each one heavy with truth. The soldiers shifted uneasily, their eyes flicking from Ethan to Zereth. For the first time, they truly saw not an alien warrior, but a wounded being standing tall despite his pain. Zereth's voice broke the silence, deep and trembling. Among my people, humans are feared for wrath, but I have seen another side. I have seen compassion, and it has changed me. He looked at Ethan, his eyes glowing faintly. Your kindness will not be forgotten, not by me, not by my people. The squad leader clenched his fists, torn between duty and conscience. Command will want him dead, he said firmly, and they will demand answers for your actions. Ethan took a step forward, standing straighter despite his exhaustion. Then let them demand, but I will not take part in senseless slaughter. If that makes me a traitor, so be it. The soldiers stared at him, the weight of his defiance pressing heavily in the air. Finally, one by one, several lowered their heads, silently acknowledging his choice. But others exchanged uneasy looks, the fear of command stronger than the spark of mercy. The squad leader finally exhaled, "We can't protect him forever, Ethan, but we won't kill him here." Relief washed over Ethan, though danger still lingered. He turned to Zereth, who swayed on his feet but held his gaze steady. "You must leave before reinforcements arrive," Ethan urged. "I'll distract them, buy you time." Zereth's claws curled tightly, his voice sharp. "And leave you to face them alone?" Ethan shook his head. "This isn't about me. It's about proving mercy matters. Someone has to survive to carry the truth." For the first time since the crash, Zereth felt something like hope burning inside his chest. Slowly, he extended his clawed hand, and Ethan took it without hesitation, their grip strong, firm, unbroken. This moment, small and fragile, was greater than any battle. It was a bond that defied war, that defied fear, that defied wrath. The soldiers began to move, preparing to report back. The betrayer snarled, his voice venom. "You'll regret this, Ethan. Kindness will destroy you." But Ethan only looked at him with calm resolve. Kindness is the only thing that can save us. As dawn broke fully, Zereth slipped away into the ruins, his figure fading into shadow and light. Ethan watched him go, a strange peace filling his heart despite the danger waiting for him. He knew the war was far from over. He knew command would punish him, maybe even strip him of everything. But he also knew that his choice had planted a seed, one that might grow beyond this battlefield. Zereth paused at the edge of the ruins, turning one last time, his voice carrying across the silence. "This act will be remembered, human, when the war ends, when the wrath fades. Your kindness will be the story my people tell." Ethan raised a hand in farewell, his chest heavy yet proud. Two enemies had walked into the night as strangers, but they parted as something more, brothers born not of blood, but of choice. The ruins remained silent, but in that silence something powerful had begun. Not the end of a war, not yet, but the beginning of a truth stronger than fear. Wrath had been expected, but kindness had been found, and kindness, in the end, would be remembered longer than any battle,